Hello, and welcome to my final stats project. My topic was chapel, and here's my chapel survey findings. So the reason I chose this um, topic and the question that I began was as what are Lee students' opinions on chapel? That's what this whole survey was about. Because chapel is a very important part of life at Lee. It's a pretty big part. We have to go to it twice a week. It's required 75% of the time. But we don't really know what students think about it. We hear from faculty a lot. So this survey was to find what students' opinions on chapel is. So the method I used for collecting my data was through an anonymous survey. I had 51 participants and they all consented to this project. Um, I got my survey out through GroupMe's and just having my friends take it. I posted a social media post and had people take it that way that were Lee students. And this was effective, but the only issue I came across was that most of the people that took my survey were either freshmen and sophomores, just because that's the groups that I'm connected to as a freshman. Um, so that's just something to keep in mind when looking at my findings, that this kind of reflects the opinion more at freshmen and sophomores than juniors and seniors. So first things first is my general gathered information. This is just what I found. My first graph here is of years of college. Again, I was just talking about this. It's the first year, second years, third years, fourth years. And I made this graph because I got some really weird answers on that question. I got some zeros, I got some 1.5s. So I made this graph to kind of better reflect what they were trying to say here. So, and again, you can see that large gap. We have a ton of freshmen, a ton of sophomores, and not that many juniors and seniors. So again, just something to keep in mind. And here is what I found for the age range of participants. Have 18, 19, and 20-year-olds. I have 11 18-year-olds, 18 19-year-olds, and 11 20-year-olds, and so on. I have 21 to 22. So that's kind of the age range of the participants. So here is my main idea question. This is the question that I chose for the rest of the questions following after this to kind of build upon, and that was how much chapel should be required. So this question kind of surprised me. I didn't expect the answers that I got. I did expect 50% to be the largest portion, and it was. 35 people chose 50%. It was the most chosen option, but I did expect at least somebody to choose 0%, meaning that they didn't think chapel should be required, but nobody did. And 13 people chose 75%. That was the second most chosen option, and then 3 people chose 25%. So barely anybody chose that one. And then my next question was chapel should be once a week. There was a mild concentration to the 5 or more side, so there's a mild opinion that chapel should only be once a week, but it's still pretty spread out in either the, like, kind of no opinion area, and then there's 5 down here at 1 or at 3, but there's still just a mild concentration on the 5 or more side. The next is chapel should be at night. There was an overwhelming majority against having chapel at night. As you can see that right there, we have 30 people on 1 and then 9 people on 2. So people do not want chapel to be at night. Chapel should be more than twice a week. Again, a very high concentration on the no side, 25, 6, and 8 on 1 to 3. Chapel should be shorter. The opinions here were kind of varied, but again, they mostly stayed on the 5 or less side. A lot were either indifferent about having chapel be shorter or against it. So here are my noticeable data trends. There weren't that many just because, as you just saw, there was most people had opinions that were the same, but I did find one that's kind of interesting, and it was with my denominational questions. I had 2 questions that denomination relationship to chapel opinion. I had 2 questions. They were raised, what denomination were you raised, and what denomination do you identify as? For raised, you can see that there are a large portion of participants were raised Baptist, 22 people, and that's that blue right here. And many of this like little rainbow over here, that's kind of the other options. But a large portion identify as non-denominational now. You have 28 people in this green. That's the green over here too, non-denominational. And you can really see that like large shift from other denominations to non-denominational. So my question I had was, what does the specific group cohort that switched from a different denomination to non-denominational think about chapel? And here's what I found. So 8 out of 15 voted for 75% or more chapels. So as you saw, there was 13 votes for 75% or more, and 62% of those came from people who switched from a denomination to non-denominational. Now, I can't say anything about this trend, but it's large enough to be noted and um, as like a trend for that specific group. So last but not least, here's my final findings. And I made this little chapel changes funnel to kind of show what I'm thinking of with these questions when I made them. So the first question, like the largest portion, is just yes or no. Should chapel be required or should chapel not be required? As you saw that earlier, it was kind of in my percentage question. So, and as you saw, nobody picked 0%. So everybody that took the survey believes that yes, chapel should be required in some form. So the next question was how much chapel should be required? And we saw that there was a majority that believed that 50% of chapel should be required. And the next question was when. We saw those following. Should it be moved at night? Should it be more than once a week? Oops. Should it be less times a week? And once you get that, you ask yourself, what length of time? How long should chapel be? Should it be shorter? Should it be longer? And once you take all that into account, you get the final results of improved chapel, and here they are. So chapel changes based on participants' opinions. Chapel should only be required 50% of the time. That's a change that should happen. Chapel should not change time of day. Chapel should not meet more than twice a week. Chapel should not be shorter. Mild preference for chapel being only once a week. We saw that. That's the only one that had a change. And chapel should stay the same length. So that's all my findings. Thank you for listening. You can follow this link here if you want to look at the survey in full, and thank you.